Hello and welcome to Oddspedia Premier League Match Day 9. We have a great Arsenal, Liverpool, two of the three title contenders, even if Man City probably is going to be the winner. And Tom, we still have four teams without a win.
Yeah, never happened before in English top flight history, not just Premier League history, the history of the English top flight, that four teams have gone this far into a season without a victory. Will one of them do it this weekend? Well, you need to watch this show to find out.
All right. Actually, your tips last week were really accurate. I was checking them out, and most of them were really, really good. Let's try another good week. Guys, remember to leave your comments. Of course, press the like, and now let's go on with the show. And this time we have a game on Friday. For those who want some entertainment, on Friday we have Leicester City, Nottm Forest. And I would say it's been a positive start for Leicester City. 6 points above relegation, back-to-back wins, really important. Win against Southampton, incredible win, I would say, after being 2-0 behind. And Nottm Forest is still a really trustworthy team. Tom, what a season for Nuno Espiritu Santos' men.
Yes, I do just want to mention, though, that I had a draw for Southampton against Leicester, and it was coming in the 97th minute. So I might be the only person in world football, bar Southampton fans, who wasn't happy to see that late Leicester goal, because it ruined my bet. It frustrated me. But yeah, look, both these teams have had really good starts, right? Really, really good starts to the season. We expected almost nothing from Leicester City as a newly promoted team who don't have a great deal of depth and quality. And I think Nottm Forest, you know, Nuno, we've joked about him before on this show, and people have told jokes about him, but he's actually very good at this one thing, which is low block, which is stay in the game, which is add physicality to the team. And he's got an informed striker in Chris Wood. He's got a defensive pairing in Murillo and 𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿, who are up there with the best in the league at this moment in time. So yeah, fantastic start. It's a derby in the Midlands between these two teams. They are teams who don't historically like each other, and it's the Steve Cooper derby as well, one of the most popular Nottm Forest managers of recent times, now in charge of Leicester City, where before the win last weekend, there was some discussion, how long has he got to run? So it's a really fascinating game. In terms of Leicester, I think that 𝐿𝐴𝐵 came off the bench and had a big impact last week. 𝗏𝗏𝗏 came off the bench and had a big impact last week. I expect them to start in a front three with Jamie Vardy in this game. They also have the options of Buonanotte and Mavidi. So they've got a good depth of squad, actually, Leicester, which maybe I hadn't given them credit for at the start of the season, but you never really know how teams are going to take to the Premier League, and some of these guys really have. They've scored in every game as well, Leicester. That's really impressive. Again, coming up to the Premier League, you never quite know how teams are going to do. Scoring is the most important thing. I would say more important than clean sheets, because if you can't score, you can't win. Simple as that. It's a funny old game. But their record of 12 goals in 8 is pretty decent. Vardy scoring goals being the git he ever was. How long that lasts throughout the season, I don't know. But yeah, all told, lots of positives about Leicester City. With Nottm Forest, look, I can already tell you exactly how this game is going to go, because I've mentioned how they play already. They're going to low block. They're going to be physical in midfield. They're going to have Yates and another. I'd expect Ward-Prowse sitting in front of Murillo and 𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿, trying to win the ball back and then distribute well. They'll have Hudson-Odoi and maybe Elanga on the wings, stretching the play, and they'll try and create chances for Chris Wood whenever they can. And worth as well noting Elliot Anderson, who left Newcastle United to go to Nottm Forest in the summer because of Newcastle's financial fair play, profitability issues. Best player on the field on Friday night in the victory against Crystal Palace, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen again here. He's replacing kind of Gibbs-White in that role, and you didn't know Gibbs-White was missing. That's quite the compliment, I think, for Elliot Anderson. So how's the game going to go? Well, there's, I think, two ways. Number one, if you're going to go Leicester, you go by a couple of goals, because I mentioned their goal-scoring record. Trouble is, at home, only 4 goals scored in 4. That's a goal a game. That's not particularly strong. So I'm going to pip here for a Nottm Forest win. I like that straight up at 2.40. I think whatever way you slice this, if Forest win it, it is going to be by a low-scoring margin. Wouldn't be surprised if you could take the under 2.5. But again, group bets, they're really coming off at the moment, the group bets. I think I had 2 last week out of the 4 I predicted. Forest win, 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, 3.5. Double your money, spread the money across, very likely score lines, and all low-scoring Forest wins.
7 out of the 8 games were under 2.5 goals for Nottm Forest. They are the kings and masters of these stats. So, of course, take a look at the under market. The odds are pretty similar for all the 3 outcomes. Next game on Saturday already, Aston Villa, Bournemouth. What a season for Emery. They've won all the games in the Champions League, and also they are flying in the Premier League in the top 4 at least. And they were able to beat Fulham. It's not easy to win at 𝐿𝐵𝗵𝐻 coming back from behind. Also, happy week for Bournemouth, Tom, after that win against Arsenal. Away, they lost to Leicester and Liverpool in the last 2 games. Villa, super favorites, but still good odds, around 2.
Yeah, I like Villa to win here. I think the reason for the doubt is because we are a few days on from the Champions League, and as we saw from the Man United game for Aston Villa, for example, and historically, frankly, for every team that's been in Europe, there is a hangover a couple of days later when you play in the league, and they don't have the kind of extra day going into Sunday, which I think they probably should have, even if they played on the Tuesday. I would give them till the Sunday to recover, but that's just me. The Premier League doesn't do that. You never quite know what you're going to get. And look, I think Aston Villa are tremendous, but I do think it's a real small squad. And a lot of the players that played in midweek, a lot of the players that played last weekend are going to have to go again. And still no Matty Cash, no Leon Bailey, Jacob Ramsey, doubts about Amadou Onana. I'm not sure 𝗀𝗏𝗏 is going to be back for this as well. And if you're working with a squad of like 16 and 4 or 5 are out, 3 of them probably guaranteed starters, you're going to have some issues. It's just going to happen that way. But look, what a season they've had. You mentioned it in the Champions League, top of the Champions League group following their victory in midweek. And across the season, 15 goals scored across 8 games. The home form's a bit patchy. Only 2 wins in what they've played. But look, tough games and tough moment against Man United. The Arsenal result could have gone either way. Beyond that, a couple of victories. So it's tricky there. In terms of Bournemouth, look, really impressive again. I still think, despite the fact he had 2 sort of involvements in major moments last week for Bournemouth in terms of Saliba getting sent off and winning the penalty, still not sure on Evanilson in terms of someone who's going to replace Solanke as a goal scorer. Semenyo had a quiet game last week despite the victory. Ouattara had a quiet game last week despite the victory. But look, the opponent and all that, maybe there's less chance to shine offensively. So I get that, but I do have a couple of concerns about Bournemouth moving forward. So I think that you could look at Villa win here. I'm going to look Villa win, and I'm going to look for a Villa win and it being quite tight. A Villa and under 3.5 goals in the game brings you in at 3. Not amazing, but I do think you're looking at a tight game. Bournemouth very sound defensively. Villa, a couple of days on from the Champions League. Game's going to struggle to motor. As the game goes on, I quite fancy Villa to take it. Wouldn't be surprised draw at halftime and Villa win, but take Villa at under 3.5. 0-0 at halftime, incidentally, is 3.5. So just a 0-0 scoreline at halftime. Happens a lot post-Champions League, post-Europa League, so it's always worth looking at. And if it's double your money, I like to take it more often than not. And even though it's not been happening, he did score in midweek. I'm still running with it. Duran, last goal scorer at 7. He isn't going to start this game. He is going to come on. And if it's level with 10 minutes to go and Duran comes on, that's easy money, I think.
He scored the second goal against Bologna in the Champions League, as you said. Well, next game, Brentford, Ipswich. Also great odds to back Brentford, I would say. 1.77 Ipswich. Even if they've been poor, they are out of the relegation spots with only 4 points and without a win, because there are 3 teams that are worse than them so far, and they are coming from a painful defeat, I would say, against Everton, also 4-1 against West Ham. And we know, Tom, that Brentford are super strong at home. All home games, by the way, were both teams to score. So all in, no, with Brentford.
Yeah, Brentford's home record, really, really good this season. They're a very solid team. You know they're a solid team. This Thomas Frank Brentford have been around for 6 years now across Championship and Premier League. Do they concede many goals? No, they don't. Do they score many goals? Well, apart from the Wolverhampton Wanderers thrashing that they gave them a couple of weeks ago, they don't really. They're relatively low scorers. It'd be 5 in 7 beyond the 5 they scored in the one game. So solid and unspectacular, but their home form, 3 wins and 1 draw, is really, really good. And with Ipswich Town, I mean, I think we've all been impressed to a degree with Ipswich Town. Like, 𝗛𝗏 has had some good moments. I think the central defensive pairing at times has been good. Hutchinson at times has been good. There's little things about them where you think, yeah, okay. Plus, you know, I watched the West Ham game recently and you thought, yeah, there's some nice football being played here. Greaves at times looks all right at the back. But in the end, do they have the quality to stay in this league? I think they don't. And, you know, statistically, when you've gone 8 games without victory, if we get to a quarter of the season, which we're basically at, and they haven't won, there's very little chance they're going to stay in the league. So in this particular game, go for a Brentford win. I think that's pretty standard. I'd probably look at some minor handicaps here. A minus 1.5 handicap is 2.88. That's a 2-0 victory. I quite fancy that. If you're feeling brave, 3-0 or more. Minus 2.5, that's 5.5. If this replicates the West Ham game from a couple of weeks ago, that was 4-1. I think this will be similar. I'll be taking that at 5.5.
All right, Tom, let's go with the next game. Brighton Wolves, super favorite Brighton, 1.6. Another team that is struggling. Wolves, what a season for them. Only 1.5 consecutive defeats. They were this close to get something from Man City, something that no one expected. And Brighton, they are doing a great season. After the 𝗀𝗵𝗿, they are flying.
Yeah, I mean, the issue for Brighton is that, as ever with them, the injuries are starting to rack up now. Danny Welbeck went off last week against Newcastle United after scoring the winning goal. We don't think he's back for this one. 𝐬𝐭𝐴𝐵𝗵 is missing. Carlos Baleba is missing. Adam Webster is missing. James Milner is missing. I think Van Hecke is still out with a groin problem. And look, they are famous for when a player gets injured, someone else comes in and it's seamless. It's the whole Brighton shtick, and it's something they've been really so good at, better than anyone else, certainly in English football. But, you know, I keep thinking eventually that is going to pay. And I think with Wolverhampton Wanderers, you know, the teams that are down there, we mentioned very top of the programme, 4 teams without victory this season. It's never happened in English top flight history. I don't fancy Ipswich. I think they're going to go down. I think Crystal Palace are going to continue to struggle. I don't fancy Southampton, but I do think Wolves have had an incredibly tough start. And there has been some positive moments in what they've been able to do so far. I think that even though 𝗀𝗏𝐿 has been missing, Larsson scoring, I think, is important. The midfield is getting a bit better with each week, as we saw last week against Manchester City. And I think someone next to Craig Dawson, I know Mosquera continues to be out. I still think Dawson has a lot to offer as a Premier League central defender. And so whoever plays alongside him, I think they'll get better. Plus, even though Jose Sarr, was he at fault for the goal? I don't know. He was involved in the Bernardo Silva incident that led to City's winner last week. I do think he's better than Sam Johnston, who had a real bad game against Liverpool last time I saw him. So even though I don't particularly rate Sarr, he's better than the guy they brought in to replace him. So that, I think, improves Wolverhampton Wanderers. In terms of the game, I think it's going to be tight. I think there's every chance that Wolverhampton Wanderers are going to put on a similar performance to what they did against Man City last week. Forget the 23 conceded. I think you look at the last couple of games, certainly last game, I think they've got better. Look at the Liverpool game, look at the City game, both 2-1 defeats, but they played well. I think it'll be similar. You're looking at 2-1 to Brighton here. That's Brighton to win and under 3.5 goals in the match at 2.63. And I think 2-1. I really think that's going to come in here. So spread it across a group bet. 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, 3.25. I think that comes off.
And another team without a win, Southampton, also looking really doomed. Only 1 point, 18 goals conceded. That defeat, really harmful defeat against Leicester City. And this is kind of a no-brainer. Tom, where have you found any value on this Man City Southampton?
Well, there is no value as usual, right? Like, Man City to win is a bet that comes in more often than not, even though for some reason in data in the Champions League, they count getting knocked out of the Champions League as not getting beaten, which is really annoying me. 26 games unbeaten. They didn't win the Champions League. So the stat doesn't make any sense, but whatever. Look, Southampton are trying to play a football that in the Championship with the players they've got they could do. In the Premier League, they simply can't do it. They're getting found out on a weekly basis, and that is why there's a frustration with Russell Martin. The way they threw the game against Leicester last weekend was painful. That'll sting, and that'll sting not just for the season. That'll sting for a long, long time, considering, too, that in not too distant history, Leicester have gone to Southampton and beaten them 9-0 at St Mary's. So it's a team they do not want to see. Jamie Vardy is a man they do not want to see. And that one would have stung last week, and they will carry that into this week. They're going to do whatever they can to keep the score down. They don't want a cricket score here. I think City, scoring 5 in a numbers padding exercise against Prague in midweek. They didn't really have to put too much effort into that, so I don't expect many changes here. And you look at the handicap market, I've personally gone minus 3.5. That's 2.88. That's 4-0 or more. And then you've got to look at scorers. Now, I know the trouble with Guardiola is pet roulette, in that he does often change a lot, but weirdly, I don't think he will here. I'm here to be proved wrong, but again, the midweek game was so easy. I think the stronger teams will be in the Premier League right now for City. Haaland hat-trick, 5.5. Don't discount that. Great acrobatic goal in midweek amongst, I think, the 2 he scored. I also quite like Phil Foden here, who's had a tough start to this season. Phil Foden to score 2 or more in this game is 9.5. He made a bit of a habit of scoring lots of goals against the also-rans in the Premier League last season. And so Foden to score 2 or more, 9.5, is the other kind of odd bet. But look at City scoring, look at the handicap market. I've gone for 4-0 or more, but depends how brave you want to be.
What a goal scored by Haaland with this back heel, like in the height of my head. He was a ninja in that great goal scored against Sparta Prague. On Saturday, we also have Everton Fulham, really interesting one. This one with really high odds for every single outcome. Everton waking up, as I told you, Tom, it was a good idea to back them against Ipswich. It's never a good idea to back Everton, but they are climbing spots in the standings. Be careful with this game because Fulham, they lost to Villa and Man City, but they are a very good side.
Yeah, I mean, Everton, never bet on Everton is a mantra we've had for a long time here, the couple of years we've done this show, right? And I think you're right to point it out, but I'm gonna bet on Everton because I think that, if you take away the points deduction last season, they would have been safely in mid-table, maybe looking at the European places. Probably not qualifying, but looking at a top half finish. Are they particularly easy on the eye? No, they're not. Without 𝗀𝗵𝗏𝗀 at centre-half, they've still got to play Michael Keane. I know he scored a great goal last week. I know he's become a bit of a cult figure, but defensively, they are weaker without Branthwaite. There was some talk he might be back for this one, but as I have it, he's still going to be out. We'll find out together. And offensively, Dwight McNeil's had such a brilliant start to the season, scoring goals, creating chances, takes the corners. In him, they've got one of the form players in the league. And when you're outside that top grouping, a player coming to the fore and being outstanding can make all the difference. So lots of positives there about Everton. And for Fulham, I don't think they're going to finish in the top half. I don't think they're going to be European contenders, but I do think, Raul Jimenez and Adama Traore and Emil Smith-Rowe and lots of individuals have had really good starts to this season. But you just saw a bit of a crumble last week against Aston Villa. I think Anderson being out, suspended, is a huge blow, which leaves you 𝐿𝐵𝗵𝗏 and 𝗔 That is not a good defensive pairing. They are both players that make mistake after mistake after mistake in games. They'll cost you at least 1 in every game, which means you've got to score 2. And I think it's tough to score 2 against Everton. I know that, in general, 15 goals conceded in 8 is not great. But, when teams score 1, it's the second, the third that's cost Everton. They are very much often involved in tight games. So I think it'll be quite tight here. But I quite fancy Everton. 2 things on Dwight McNeil. Number 1, McNeil scores and Everton win. That's 7. He is always involved in the goals. He's scoring great individual goals. I've gone with the scoring over assists. But I do think if you pick out assist at 3.5 and double that with an Everton win, again, really good money there. Everton win on its own is nearly 2-1. That's 2.7 on the decimal, so I quite like that. And Everton under 3.5 goals in this match brings you in at 3.5. I just have a feeling for Everton right now. And even though there's been lots of goals conceded for both, 11 Fulham and 15 for Everton, I still think tight and I still think toffees.
Some changes in Tom's perspective across the season is normal. Let's see if they can keep it up. and stay far away from the relegation spots right now, 5 points away from Crystal Palace, but it's also because the bottom four, they've been so poor. We have a Super Sunday in the Premier League. First game, Chelsea-Newcastle, a really good one. Chelsea played all right, I would say, at Anfield. At least I was watching the first half and they were good. I like them. But they lost. They controlled the game at times and they lost. They also drew in the last home game against Nottingham Forest, and Newcastle was surprised by Brighton. It's only 2 points in the last 4 games for Newcastle.
Yeah, look, I think this game screams draw, frankly. I'll say it for you now. It seems to me like Chelsea, for whatever reason, are struggling to convert home games, and Newcastle, they're not desperate for points, but your point is well made. The form has tailed off, and there were real concerns about the lack of energy about Newcastle last week in the loss against Brighton. That was certainly, of all the results last week, one that I did not see coming. Chelsea's issue is defence. You know, offensively, Nicholas Jackson scoring goals. Cole Palmer, though he was quiet last week, still had that great chance that went over the crossbar. They still have a deep bench of players. Again, they can just bring on 𝐬𝐿𝐴, you know, in the 70th minute for a laugh. And we can discuss how good or bad we think he is, but he's still, you know, a pretty decent player to bring on in that scenario. They have a deep bench, they have a lot of players, and they can impact games. So I do think Chelsea are going to score here. 17 goals scored in 8 suggests that. And with Newcastle, I think that Isak came back last week, looked rusty. Wilson's coming back, but he's going to be rusty for a while. Having that ability to change that front pairing is going to make a difference for them. But beyond that, the midfield looks a bit sloppy. Bruno Guimaraes has not been amazing. Joe Linton not having massive impacts in games. Tonali, yeah, a couple of weeks ago we thought he looked back to it, and then last week you watch him again and think, oh, what's happening here? And then defensively missing Botman and playing Bird. It is going to happen across the season where that's going to be a problem. He is not as good as Sven Botman in that position. And every week, slight little mistake, a little issue here, a little issue there. It keeps affecting Newcastle. So screams draw, take the draw at 4. Absolutely love that. If you're going to pick a winner, I would take Chelsea. Chelsea under 3.5 goals in this match is 3.25. I mentioned that only really because apart from that weird anomaly game against Brighton where there were goals, it's been quite tight. 1-1 against Nottingham Forest, 1-1 against Crystal Palace. Didn't score against Man City, but, you know, that's Man City. But in general, Chelsea games have been quite tight, or they've been a blowout. I don't see it being a blowout, so I'm taking tight. Under 3.5, I mentioned, is 3.25. And 2 individuals I keep picking out. Palmer scores and Chelsea win is 3. Jackson scores and Chelsea win is 3.5. They are the 2 guys most likely. And that's how you make some money here.
Let's try to make some money in the Crystal Palace Tottenham, and the odds to back Tottenham are quite good, actually, around 2. We have Crystal Palace with no wins, the other team with no wins, only 3 draws, 2 of them at home against Man United and Leicester City. And this entertaining Spurs is like a Russian roulette. They smashed West Ham 4-1, but remember the last away game was that crazy game against Brighton.
Yeah, look, I mean, in terms of Crystal Palace, the concerns are manyfold right now. Not only the fact they haven't won a game all season and they're in that group of 4 teams, but also the fact they've only scored 2 goals at home this season and not 1 at home. You know, it goes to show you that a bunch of fans with a drum going da-da-da-da for 90 minutes does not an intimidating atmosphere make. My concern up front is that Mateta and 𝐿𝐴 can't work together. So why have you got them both? I don't know. I don't think Oliver Glasner knows the answer to that. And defensively, they're playing wing-backs, but wing-backs who don't have pace. And so you've got to stop playing wing-backs. That means for me, you've got to drop the 3 at the back. I don't know if Oliver Glasner is going to do that. I think that Mark Gay has looked poor at the start of this season. He obviously wanted to go. The move didn't come in. And whether that's affected his form, I don't know. But he certainly doesn't look like the £80 million pound player that Newcastle wanted last season. And then beyond that, it's not a great squad for Crystal Palace. There's a lack of depth in the team. And I think that their run at the back end of last season has masked the fact that this is an undercooked squad in many positions with little rotation. And if you take 𝐿𝐴 out, what have you got that's really a top half Premier League quality thing on current form? Not even Mateta. So that's a concern. And for Tottenham, you know, exactly what happened last week is what happened. I thought West Ham would score first, and I thought Tottenham would come on strong as the game went on. It did come off that way. Tottenham won and both teams scored. I think that's normally a pretty safe bet beyond the fact that I don't think Palace will score. So that's why I'm kind of avoiding it here. But look, defensively strong, I know West Ham had their moments last week, but in Romero and Mickey van der Ven, they've got two centre-halves who can play the high line. A lot of teams that are playing the high line don't have the defenders to do it. West Ham maybe being an example of that. And so I think Tottenham can pull that off. Taking off Maddison and bringing on Sarr and Bissouma last week in midfield gave them a balance that was missing. I think that'll continue. Son is back. 𝗀𝗀 playing well. Loads of positives about Spurs. Plus, Richarlison back on the bench gives them an option to rotate too. So, Tottenham win this game. I think they win quite handily. Take over 2.5 goals in the match as a conservative bet. That's 2.5. But I like both group bets here. The conservative set of groups is 1-0, 2-0, and 2-1. That's 3.5. Really, really good odds considering they are likely scorelines. But I think Tottenham will score at least 3 here. And to cover that, 3-0, 3-1, or 3-2 is 6. That's 5-1 for a scoreline I really fancy. I would actually say Tottenham and both teams to score against any other team but Crystal Palace. But because of the 2 goals, I'm avoiding it. So I'm going to groups and not both teams.
Only 5 goals scored by Crystal Palace, the lowest tally in this Premier League. Then we have West Ham, Man United, another great game. Man United suffered a lot, had to come back to win against Brentford. West Ham, Tom, you are jumping off from 𝗀𝗶𝗿𝗀's boat?
Well, I think 𝗀𝗻𝗀 has brought nothing positive to West Ham during his time there, not one thing. And I absolutely do take the argument that sometimes it takes time for a manager to implement his ideas, but you can see what 𝗀𝗏's doing. You can see what Glasner, when he came in, was trying to do. You can see what Arne Slot is trying to do. I feel like 𝗀𝗶𝗿𝗀 has come from space and he's watching football for the first time. Like, his substitutions make no sense. Sometimes his setup from the start is frankly stupid. The Chelsea game is my case in point, but it's happened quite a lot. And you saw with Mohamed Kudus last week, there was a lack of discipline now at West Ham, which we haven't seen for years when David Moyes has been there. Kudus not playing in this game is going to miss at least 3, and it might be more following his total meltdown at the Tottenham game. Is that a problem? Yeah, maybe. Like, Kudus is great at beating 4 players, but his end product is not quite there. His passing is not there. His crossing has not been there. He is a player still in development. And I wonder whether Somerville coming in as part of a front 3, I don't know how much of an impact that's going to have. You know, Kudus has not been that effective this season. But look, I do still think that West Ham aren't going to go down. They're not going to be involved in any sort of relegation battle. I think that Todibo and Kilman, despite their issues last week, I think that will come good. I think Wan-Bissaka and Emerson are good fullbacks. I think up front, if the front 3 is Antonio, Bowen and Somerville, that's a 3 that can score goals. So I don't have any worries there. The midfield is the problem. Guido Rodriguez cannot move. He cannot move. He turns slower than milk. He cannot play in this league. I don't know how many times I've got to say this. He is not suited to this league. So Edson Alvarez has to come in. Souček's going to play. That leaves you one other position. And it might be Paqueta, but it shouldn't be Paqueta. Nobody has played as bad as Lucas Paqueta in the Premier League this season. At fault for at least 2 goals last week. At fault for goals every week. He's giving the ball away. He's stroppy. He gives away terrible free kicks. If West Ham are going to win, they're going to drop Paqueta. If Paqueta plays, I'll change my bet. So in terms of Manchester United, I think that everything that happened last week is what we expected. They were slow. They were slovenly. They were uncreative. They were uninspired, but they got the job done. They are playing on Thursday in the Europa League before we record this, so something unexpected could have happened. But there's going to be heavy rotation. No Mainoo, no Garnacho, no Mazraoui, no Mason Mount. Even though Rashford was good last week, you couldn't really convincingly bet on Man United and Rashford to have another great game on top of the previous one. So look, I think West Ham win here. I think West Ham win because they need to. And they've had a good record against Man United in recent times. And they're actually pretty decent odds to win. They have to win, frankly, West Ham. Otherwise, I think that might... I don't think 𝗀𝗶𝗍𝗀's going to go, but I think that might be the end of his relationship with the West Ham fan base for the foreseeable future. And I think it will inevitably lead to a December sacking, even though they won't do it this weekend. West Ham win 2.8, quite like it. I think Jarrod Bowen is brilliant, one of the best players in his position in the league, up there with, just under the Mo Salah levels in terms of ability on that attacking right-hand side. First goal, Jarrod Bowen. Kudus being out, it's only going to be Bowen. That's 7.5. And a group bet West Ham, 1-0, 2-0, 2-1 is 5. West Ham will sneak this.
Well, then Ten Hag would be in danger if they lose again, if Man United lose again in the east of London. And the last game, what a game this one, Arsenal-Liverpool, with Arsenal having a difficult week. They lost to Bournemouth. Saliba is out for this game because he was sent off, and they only beat, they won Shakhtar Donetsk 1-0. Liverpool, on the other hand, Tom, they are in amazing form. Great win in Leipzig with Núñez scoring. 8 consecutive wins since the defeat against Forest at home. The only bad news is a player that you like a lot, like 𝗀𝗏𝗀, is again injured.
Yeah, it's the issue with 𝗀𝗏𝗀. We speak about this quite a lot. I think he could have been a legendary Premier League Liverpool player. Trouble is, he's always injured, and if you miss 10, 15 games a season, you're never going to build that reputation for yourself. So that is a blow. Look, the only thing I think it is worth looking at here is Arsenal have had 3 red cards in 8 games. So Arsenal to have a man sent off is something I would absolutely throw into the mix here on any bet you're doing. They are a team without discipline. They are a team that are being petulant, and they are a fan base that are wanging on about conspiracy theories when all 3 red cards they've had this season have been justified, frankly. You know, they have been. And you can piss and moan about it as much as you want, but it is the case. They are all straight forward decisions for officials in all those games. So that's a concern. Saliba being out is huge. We don't know about Bukayo Saka, Jurriën Timber, Ben White. Martin Ødegaard is missing. Calafiori came off in midweek, so I don't have an update on him right now, but he could be missing. All massive concerns for an Arsenal team who, look, let's face it, they ain't played well. You know, we can talk about injuries and suspensions, but they have not been good in the Premier League this season on a consistent basis. They've had a physicality about them that's been impressive, but something is lacking. And the setup last week against Bournemouth, even before the red card, it was very samey with Mourinho and Rice and Partey all sort of doing the same jobs. I don't know. There's some questions to answer for Mikel Arteta in this game, and it's a must-win game. They have to beat Liverpool this weekend, otherwise 2 defeats in a row to Liverpool's 2 wins in a row, 6-point gap across 2 weeks. It might be too much to make up across the campaign because Liverpool aren't going to lose too many games. Again, very impressive in midweek, as they were, I thought, last weekend in a tough game against Chelsea. You mentioned Jota. The other significant absentee, of course, is Alisson, but as has been mentioned a lot, Kelleher is a very, very good deputy and has looked really good when he's come in. So lots to like about Liverpool. A struggle for Arsenal in this game. And I mean, look at Liverpool's form as well. 7 victories across the 8, winning tight games, 1-0, 2-1, 2-1. I think it's going to be another real tight game. I don't think Liverpool are going to run away with it, nor do I think Arsenal are going to have enough to beat Liverpool in this match. So don't discount the draw at 3.4. Really think Arsenal are going to try and hold on in this game for as long as they can to nick it from a corner. As ever with Arsenal, take score from a corner and take Gabriel to score from it. Gabriel to score from a header was 8 this morning. That's always worth a punt when it comes to Arsenal. It'll come in 7-8 times across the season. But take Liverpool win at 2.8. Very rare to see a near double your money for a Liverpool victory. And you double that with what I think is going to happen, a tight scoreline. Look at the under market. Under 3.5, yes, but under 2.5 is 6.5. I think it's going to be 2-1. So under 2.5 might not necessarily come in, but 6.5 is so grabbing. 1-0 or 2-0 to Liverpool. Yeah, I really, really like that, and that's what I'll be taking.
Let me know, guys, in the comments, who are you backing? Arsenal won last season in the Premier League 3-1. Liverpool won in the FA Cup 2-0. And at Anfield, we saw a draw. So every outcome we saw last season, and the odds are amazing for all the outcomes. Let me know, again, if you are backing Arsenal or Liverpool in this great game at the Emirates. Before we go, just to remind our listeners that we have a new platform available for you, Discord. Oddspedia is now also on Discord, and that you can participate in our tipster competition. We have a specific one for the Premier League, so it's completely for free to register, and you can win cash prize, which is very good, to be honest. Tom, your safe bet?
Safe bet is Manchester City to beat Southampton, but on its own, it's not worth too much. So take a minus 1.5 handicap, 2 goals or more, 1.33.
And the ACCA?
Treble again this week. I keep getting 2 of 3. It's driving me absolutely insane, but this one's coming in. I can feel it. Arsenal let me down last week and Man City the week before. What kind of world are we living in? But for this week, Brentford, they will win at home against Ipswich. Tottenham are going to win their game. And Man City beat Southampton at home. It's 3.18. It's really short, but I fancy this one to come in. I want it to come in this week.
Nice. Thank you, Tom. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Bye-bye.